Lab number 212. In this lab, we will continue development of our electricity consumption checker application. And right now, we will focus on modifying our template files. And we will start with a login screen. We won't reinvent the bicycle once again because we developed exactly the login screen that we are needed in our another lab series where we were developing technical maintenance assistant applications. So we will just take the login screen from there. You can either go to the workspace of this application and take the login HTML from there, or you can also use the files on your host system in lab 212 files folder and just take the login from there. So this is how I will do it. I will take login HTML from there and I will place it inside my templates folder with replacing the existing one, just like this. So let's check if it's working. It's not. Yeah, and the reason for that is actually because we are missing the translate provider that we were using in our previous app. This app also will be translated into several languages, so we'll use the same translate mechanism, so I mean Angular translate, and let's basically copy one more file from our host system, then GS, where we were loading the static files, and place it inside GS folder. So as you remember, here actually we were working with the lang folder and looking for JSON files inside that folder. Let's create it. And let's start with several files here. So we will have, first of all, of course, English file with name ngJSON. So inside we will have some default structure that we will use in other files also. So the lang will be, in our case, English as the first one. Then we will have also a demo button. The demo button will corresponds to demo. And then we will also have username password. So username will be actually username, and the same for password. Just like this, and then we will also have the sign in button. Just like this. So this is basically how our login page will look like in terms of translation, and we will save this file and copy it to a few more. So we will have also Russian translation. Instead of this, in case of Russian, we will, instead of English, use Russian. And then we will also do the same for Polish language. So we'll copy this to PL. Let's open this file. So this will be Polish language, just like this. And we will also copy this file to one more. And this will be Czech language. So instead of Polski, we will type something like this. We will use the special characters later on. It's not really necessary right now. So basically, we have 4 languages here ready for us, ready for use. And in order to use them, we will need to install actually through Boyer Angular Translate together with Angular Translate loader static files. So let's do it. Let's go back to Ionic project. I will shut down the live preview and with the Boyer install those plugins. If you don't remember how to do that, actually the good way to do that will be to open the browser, look for Angular Translate. So just navigate to the same page as we were doing it before, and I use the code from there. So Boyer install Angular Translate, just like this. Yep, and then we will do the same for loader static files. It's located under async, so this is the code. Boyer install Angular Translate loader static files. Excellent, and now under lib we should actually see them already. And next step for us will be to load them in our index.html file. So let's do it. First, let's add our services.js that we recently added. I mean lang.js file after services, sorry. And the next step for us will be to load actually those two plugins. So one of them, let's do it before our JS files. One of them will be inside lib, then Angular Translate, and then the correct URL will be Angular Translate.js, this one, and almost the same will be for Angular Translate loader static files. So the URL will be actually Angular Translate / loader static files, and then the file name will be the same. So next step for us will be to load this module in app.js as a dependency. So as you remember, probably it's called by the name of the guy who actually created this module. So this is the correct name, and let's use it here, and then we will need to use it also in our login controller. So in our login controller inside controllers.js, we will need to add dependency to translate our app. So translate, and we will also need actually to trigger that translation. So as you remember, in login page we were using the function called switch language, so let's use the same in our controller now. So we'll define a new function here called switch language, and this will be responsible for changing the language. So the way how we were changing language, we were doing actually the triggering this translate use, and then depending on the language that we were using, we were selecting different from that one. So with translate use, we are specifying which one is working now, and then if it's not English, for example, we were changing it to something like Russian. So let's try to repeat that one. So basically it will do a trick for changing between those two. So let's just try to see if it's working or not. Maybe we forget about something. So We need to launch live reload once again. So we do have our login, but we don't have any buttons on the top. And actually translation is also not working. So let's check. Yeah, the module that we are trying to load is different. So in our languages, by default, we were loading the app module called touch. And in our case, instead of that, we should, of course, use our ECC. So now, actually, we're seeing that translation is working for one of the languages. We don't see any buttons on the top. So let's check what is wrong with them. So basically the reason for that most probably is because inside our index.html we are trying to implement one navigation bar, and then inside login we are overridden it with the second one. So that one from index is more important, so we don't see anything that is underneath. So let's just do the following. Let's remove this code from index. We don't need it here, and we will then place it inside tabs, for example. Just like this. So we will change it later, but right now you're already seeing that our navigation bar is now visible, header bar, and actually we see the language change from Russian to English. So let's verify that our tabs are still working. Yeah, so we have our tabs working, excellent, so we don't break anything. So let's go back to login, and next thing for us to do is actually to change the switch for all languages, not just English. So basically, because in the future we can have much more languages than 4, and even 4 is a bit too much for the simple switch, let's do it in a smart way. So let's define a new available languages scope. So we will have something like a list of available languages with their keys, and just like this. So we will have the key of each language and then the value of this key, and in our case it will be actually the name of the language. So English, the same for Russian, the same for Polish and Czech. So just like this. And then now when we have the list of available languages, we will do the following. Instead of this simple switch, we will be doing a bit harder one. So for that, first of all, I will define a new variable. Let's call it something like r, and let's assign here the value of our available languages, so all the items. And then let's create one more variable. Let's call it I for our calculations in a cycle. And basically this variable will calculate the amount of items in our available languages. And then we will just need to organize a small cycle. So we'll do the following. We will say something like while I actually is not ending, we will do the following. We will check if the key that we are using now is not that we are selected from our list. We will change this key. So we will also need to define what is key we are using now. So for that, let's create one more variable, something like current. and this will be the current one, I mean either English, Russian or English, which we are using for translation right now. And basically we will compare the key that we are selecting from our available languages list to this current one. So just like this. So now we will need to do a translation itself with our just found new key. So we'll do it again with translate use, but in this case we will use our key that we just selected like this. And basically, of course, we'll need to specify also that this after this translation we will need to send back the key. Sorry, there is a mistake. So our last step is to work with our scope. I was selected language, and basically we will do the following. Yep, this should work. So let's try if this is working or not. Yeah, I forgot to remove this part. Now it's not. Let's check. Okay, so let's try to implement some kind of login to see if it's working. So console log, we will log first of all the current variable, and we'll see what language is there for now. Maybe it's not working because of it cannot find this language. So then basically we will log also our I variable. And then let's log here again translate use variables. So something like this. So actually it found out that there are 4 languages available. The current variable is correct, the current language is English, and it's not changing. And basically because right now we have 4 languages and we can have more in the future, we will need to implement a bit harder switch than this one. And let's start with defining available languages. So something like this. So we'll have a number of items here. We will use the key for identifying different languages. So each language will have its own key. And for now we'll have 4 of them. So English, then Russian, then Polish, and Czech. And just like this. Then let's do the following. So we will need, instead of this translation, create some kind of cycle to select the next one in the list and do a translation with it. So first of all, we need to know which one is current. So let's create a new variable called something like current, and let's define what is the current language. So for that, we will use translate use without any parameters. It should return us the current language that is used. So we will check that with login. And just like this. So next step for us, when we know the current language, we need to calculate how many languages are there in available languages. So let's define the new variable. Let's call it something like R. And basically this will be our scope available languages. Yes, just like this. And then we will need to define one more variable. So let's name it I, and let's calculate the length of our R variable. So just like this, and let's also log the value of I. Yep, something like this. So next step for us is actually to organize the small cycle like this. So if this is not current, then we will stop on this one. And when we will know which one we are using now, we will actually select it. So I'll do the following. We will do translate use and define this language as an input parameter. So I mean this key. Something like this. Let's also log it. Actually, let's create a new variable and log it. So let's call it something like next. It will be needed for further translation. And here we will set our key. And then let's log it like next language and this next variable. And last step for us will be to do a translation itself. So we'll do for it again translate use with the key that we just specified in next variable. So let's preview how it's working. So yeah, our translation is working perfectly. So basically we achieved what we wanted. And on this step, our lab number 12 is finished. Thank you.